Yo, so what's up, guys? Welcome back to the channel, and you already know what time it is. It's time to drop some more knowledge and some more information. In this video, as you can tell from the subject, we are going to be discussing how I and my company almost lost $6,000 on a deal. So let's jump right into the story. So it's story time, guys. I promised myself starting this channel that I would try to be as transparent as possible because I want you guys to learn from the mistakes that we make or that I make so that you don't have to make those mistakes. And this is a mistake that we made or that I made, and I should have kind of taken my own advice in the beginning before I even got into this deal. But let's jump right into the story. So as the story goes, we got a property under contract, and it was actually 3 properties that we got under contract. And in one of my videos, I go over that you should build relationships with property management companies to get deals, especially if you're in an HRM, if you're in a rental market, that you should build relationships with property management companies to get deals. Because sometimes the property management company come across clients of theirs that are looking to get rid of their properties for various different reasons. So the property management company acts on the behalf and tries to move the properties. So again, go back and watch one of those videos, one of our previous videos with me expressing or explaining to you guys how to build relationships with property managers. But nonetheless, we struck a deal with a property management company where they gave us 3 properties that they were looking to move. We sent them our contract. They reviewed it. For whatever reason, they didn't like it, right? So, and you're going to come across that, especially when dealing with property management companies. And we normally don't have this problem. They're usually pretty easy to deal with. But for some reason, this specific property management company wanted to use their contract. And that's tip number 1. Usually we're working with sellers, and not just property management companies, working with sellers in general. You want to stay in control of the deal. And that's not to sound negative or overpowering or demanding. It's just that you want to stay in control. You know, in this case in point, you know your contract, right? You don't have to relook at it every single time you want to send out a deal, a contract to the seller to sign, or even on the buyer side. You know your contract, so there's no real reason for you to review it every single time. So that's tip number 1. Always stay in control of your deal and use your contract that you're familiar with, that has been approved. Hopefully you've gotten it reviewed by your local real estate attorney to make sure that it's in compliance with your state laws, rules, and regulations. So use your contract. So back to the story, man. We ended up agreeing and saying, okay, let's use your contract. And that was a big mistake. Being that we had discussions with them and they knew pretty much basically in wholesaling, you guys know that it's pretty standard that the buyer pays all closing costs. And this is usually some of the sales pitch that you give to the seller to make it more convenient and let them know that basically you sit back and you just collect your check, that you'll pay all closing costs. You can close pretty quickly, so on and so forth, right? You guys know the spiel. But we decided to use their contract, and again, the seller, so we thought the management company knew that we weren't going to be responsible, and this is usually the case on any wholesale deal, that the seller is responsible for liens, judgments, back taxes, any of that stuff. Normally, in most cases, now there are some exceptions to the rule, but generally speaking, the seller is going to be responsible for that. That normally comes out of the seller's proceeds. Liens, back taxes, judgments, things like that. So they knew, based upon the conversation verbally that my team and I had with the management company, that they were going to be responsible for that stuff. And these 3 properties that they gave to us that we put under contract, they had those things: back taxes, liens, vacant property taxes. Here in my local market, our city has enforced that if a property has not been registered as a vacant property, that a tax or a fee will be assessed every single year that the property sits vacant. And here in my market, it's $1,500 a year. So these 3 properties have been sitting vacant for almost 5 or 6 years. So whatever that calculation is, that's how much was due on these properties. So here nor there was liens and things on the property that we found out after the title search went through that had to be paid. So let me kind of speed forward. Everything went well. The deal took a lot longer than normal because there were title issues on these properties as well. So that's another tip and another tidbit of information. When you're wholesaling properties, you're going to come across properties that have title issues that may or may not, or should I say can or cannot, may not be able to get resolved. But in this case, we were able to resolve it, and it basically almost took 3 months for the title issues to be resolved on all 3 of these properties. So you can imagine the amount of work, time, and effort that went into getting this deal completed from my team's side. So we were kind of eager to get this deal done. So we get all the way to closing, the day before closing, and the HUD is sent out. And the HUD statement, for you guys that don't know, it's basically an itemized bill that your closing attorney or your title company sends out to all parties involved in the transaction, the seller side and the buyer side. And being that we're wholesaling the property, the wholesaling company actually gets a copy of that HUD statement. And it's an itemized bill outlining all of the disbursement of the funds going to the seller and to the buyer. So basically it's just an itemized bill, a receipt, telling everyone where the money is going to be divided up at. So we get to closing the day before closing, guys, and the HUD comes out and the seller reviews the HUD, and obviously on the HUD statement it has these back taxes and liens that have to be paid, and they were on the seller side because, again, guys, remember, normally on a wholesale transaction, normally, right, this is 99% of the time that the seller is going to be responsible for the back taxes, liens, judgments, all of that stuff. They are responsible for it, and it comes out of their proceeds. So when the seller seeing the HUD and seeing all of those charges on their side of the HUD statement, they raised a red flag and said, hey, what are you guys talking about? The buyer said that they were going to cover all of these expenses. They had a net number that they wanted to receive, and any other charges on top of that, per the contract that I signed with their company. Again, this was their contract, right? It stated that I was going to be responsible for those payouts, right? All those liens and judgments, vacant property taxes, and all that stuff. So by that time, I did not, and let me kind of back up, right? That's the mistake that we made. We did not get our contract reviewed by our attorney. And we have an attorney firm or a firm that's retained that we could have sent the contract to for them to review it prior to signing. So that's tip number 2. Tip number 1 is try to use your contract. Stay in control of the deal. But if you decide to use someone else's contract, get that contract reviewed by a real estate attorney to make sure that you are covered. And we did not do that. So we took an L on this deal, almost, right? We'll get to the end of that. So we'll get to the end of the story and tell you what happened, right? But at that point, we were going to be at a loss because the deal didn't make any sense anymore if we had to pay all of these liens and back taxes and things like that. The deal basically fell apart. So we had to go back, and at first I was in denial, right? I said, wait, hold on. We discussed not what the contract said. I was talking to the seller and their attorney, that, listen, we discussed that the seller was going to be responsible for all of the liens, back taxes, vacant property assessments, and things like that, that the seller was going to be responsible. And the seller's attorney replied back and said, please refer to this phrase or this paragraph in the contract. And even when I referred back to it and looked at it, I'm not an attorney, that's not my profession, right? That's why we hired an attorney or a firm to kind of represent us in doing that, right? Or obviously I didn't use them, right? But at that case, or at that time. So when even rereading that paragraph, it still didn't make sense to me. It still seemed like we were going to pay just the regular standard closing costs, meaning the title agency's fees that comes with preparing the documents, transfer of deed, things like that. But again, normally it doesn't cover back taxes, liens, judgments, vacant property taxes, things like that. So what I did was, now in the 5th hour, in the last hour, now I want to do the right thing. Now I want to get my attorneys involved. So we forwarded the contract, the original contract that I signed. Again, it was not ours, it was theirs that we decided to use. Forwarded to our attorney, and long story short, our attorney came back and said, yeah, you are on the hook for this deal. And we, let me back up. We normally also, and we kind of have in different circles, you'll have a debate on whether you need to put down a deposit on the seller contract, your purchase agreement between yourself as the wholesaler and the seller. Normally, we don't put down a deposit. We have our end buyer, our cash buyer, put down a earnest money deposit, which covers the full deal, the full contract. But again, in different circles, you may argue that point, but that's a discussion, a whole nother discussion. So on this deal, the property management company, they required us to put down a deposit. So I agreed, because we knew that this was a deal. This was a home run, and it made sense at the time, because again, we were under the impression that we would not have to pay any of the back taxes, liens, judgments, vacant property taxes, and things like that. So at that time, it made sense. This was a home run, which we were going to make, I think it was a small assignment fee, I think like $8 grand. I'm sorry, we were going to make $8 grand on the as our assignment fee. So we ended up having to put down a deposit, right? And I believe it was a total of about $4,900, $4,900 that we had to put down as a deposit to secure the contract. So when my attorneys came back and said that, yeah, you're on the hook, at that time, listen, my heart dropped. I was like, listen, I don't want to lose no $4,000, almost $5,000 on this whole thing. But when my attorneys came back and said, basically, there's nothing that you can do, you either close on the deal or you kind of just walk away and you lose your deposit. I was like, listen, bro, I was upset. I was upset. I didn't. Who wants to lose $5 grand? And actually, I was almost at the point that I was like, listen, this deal was dead. Didn't make any sense for me to continue. So I need to suck this up as a lesson learned, a hard $5,000 lesson learned, and walk away from the deal, right? So let me stop the story right there. So again, guys, the moral of this story, and thank God it has a good outcome, a good ending story, but the moral of this story is tip number one, going back to tip number one, use your own contract that you are familiar with, right? Try to keep control of the deal. You be in control of the deal. And that starts with you using your contract. Tip number two, if you are going to use someone else's contract and you've determined that it's a good deal and you want to continue pursuing trying to wholesale the property, you want to use somebody else's contract, make sure you get an attorney to review that contract to cover your bases as a wholesaler in what you are trying to do. Because without it, you are going to get into an issue like I got into and like we had into, and you don't want to be there. It's not a good feeling. So make sure you do those 2 tips. Now, to finish up the story has a good ending. So at the point that I was going to give up and just relinquish my deposit, I sat down and reran the numbers. Now, as you all know, or you may not know, some of you guys that are new to the channel or just new to wholesaling or just new to real estate has ebbs and flows. It has its high points, it has its low points. So it's always, the market is always doing this. And definitely now we all know that this is a great time to sell your property. Buyers are coming in at higher prices than normal just because of the market, right? The seller's market. So with that said, I sat back down and reran the numbers, and the numbers looked great. Even with what the seller wanted to, again, net, what they wanted to walk away with, and now me being responsible for the back taxes, the liens, the vacant property taxes, not the judgments, but they were just back taxes, liens, and the vacant property taxes. The numbers still made sense. So what did we do? We sent the deal back out to our cash buyers, because obviously my buyer that was originally on the hook, that they didn't want the deal anymore because the numbers didn't work for them, right? So I had my team resend the deal out, and it went bananas, right? The deal went bananas. Buyers hitting back and forth. So the good thing of the story was that, or our saving grace, was that we were still able to move the deal and make more on the deal than what we were gonna originally make. So originally we were gonna make about $8,000 on the deal, but we ended up now making $15,000 on the deal. Listen, you can't make this stuff up. Listen, I'm not a man that believes in luck. I believe in God. So listen, God was on our side. So things got done, and it was a good lesson for me to learn. Again, me being transparent with you guys, and hopefully you all don't fall into the same predicament. Even though I preach some of this stuff all the time, I fell captive to it, and it is what it is. So guys, I hope that you got something out of this video. Make sure that you like, subscribe, comment below. If you have any questions, comment below. I'll be sure to answer them. But make sure you like, share this channel. If you know somebody that's trying to get into real estate and learn this wholesaling game and want to get into none of their own cash, none of their own credit, and make some money helping people, point them to this channel. You can also follow me, you guys know, on Instagram and TikTok. You can follow me there as well at the MAMBA Investor. The MAMBA Investor. So you can find me there on IG and TikTok. And our Facebook group is Wholesaling RE for Dummies. That's Wholesaling, the letters R, the letters E, the number 4 Dummies. You can join our Facebook group as well. We give tips and tricks there. So guys, I hope that you have a great, safe holiday, and Happy New Year. And come back and check us out on the next video. All right, guys, talk to you soon. Later.